Okay, let's go. What is going on, all you awesome superhero aficionados? This is the Heroes of Mutants podcast, your number one source of superhero talk. Today, we have a very exciting episode today. I'm Nick with my co-hosts Jimmy and Eric. Ruben, unfortunately, couldn't make it today. I know we've been a little bit slow posting things out and keeping up with Moon Knight, just dealing with some time scheduling conflicts, but we're here now and ready to dive into it. And it's funny because the last episode we like when we talked about this, it seemed I was hoping like there would be a silver lining for this actor, like to go back to the drawing board or have like some kind of intervention and formulating a plan to where he would get better, at least beyond that path. Like we would hear about him going to rehab or something. Like we knew, I knew just what was at stake for his terms of his career, but also just because of the fact he was very young and as talented as he is, you would hate to see that go to waste. And knowing like there's just no way when you think about it. But Ezra Miller got arrested again recently in Hawaii. And this time it wasn't for disorderly conduct. It involved actual assault. I don't think he actually meant to hurt somebody, but out of anger, he was told to leave somewhere, and out of anger, he picked up a chair, threw it, hit a 26-year-old woman in the head, and caused a small gash. So with all that in mind and everything that he's been through, especially recently, and some of the reports coming out, I think it's just very apparent he's probably gonna not be the Flash for the future. We know that Warner Brothers had those discussions that they were gonna have any future plans pertaining to Ezra Miller with Fantastic Beasts, with the DC stuff, that they were gonna put all those on hold and postpone it until they can get him on a better path or until he goes to rehab or something. But for me, I'm not so focused on that. I don't care about that per se, but it's obvious there is a very serious issue going on with this actor, and whether it's mental health, substance abuse, or just hanging out with the wrong crowd and people hyping him up and all of that, I don't exactly know, but he needs help, and I'm just hoping he gets that and can come back to his career at a later point. But it's just sad to see, honestly, man. And with all that said, we just hope he seeks the help that he needs. He obviously needs something, and there's not much to say other than that. And moving on from that, something that happened recently, when something that we knew about that we reported about too, is that Warner Brothers and Discovery reached a merger, and they closed a $43 billion deal and they're going to become Warner Brothers Discovery. And one of the cool things about this was that they talked about looking to overhaul DC entertainment. The goal is to align closely with film, streaming, and gaming content, and that they're seeking a leader to helm the DC universe or their film universe, like Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige, and they want to revitalize characters like Superman because they believe he has been left to languish. And they also want to do more with stuff like Todd Phillips' Joker. This is cool news to hear, especially just because one of the things that was really upsetting to a true passionate DC fan like me was that they had Henry Cavill, but there was no plans long-term to do anything or bring him out. And then we also heard him reports and kind of throwing it out there that he wouldn't mind being a character like Captain Britain, who is Marvel's equivalent of Captain America, or England's version of Captain America, throwing that wink out there, whether that would actually really happen or he would be around long term with the character, with like a C-D-list character like that. But the fact that it was out there and that we had him as Superman, but yet there seems to be no plans to bring him back or to do anything with this character, knowing how important he is to the DC universe as a whole, and how much more, especially for people like me who really wanted to see him do more, and that he didn't really get a chance to actually be, aside from that little snippet that we saw with like Zack Snyder's Justice League, we didn't get to see that true version of Superman or see him grow into that character. So this is cool to see.
I'm glad that they're doing this, and it's one because from what I've read, it's like they want to keep the stuff that works. So they're going to continue with the Joker like Todd Phillips Joker, Matt Reeves the Batman universe. What James Gunn is doing, they want to keep all that, but just rehaul what doesn't work. And I like that they talk a lot about Superman, and I think I agree with them. Superman has not had like a major, I mean, Man of Steel has its fans, but there hasn't, like, in the age of superhero movies, which I would say is like the early 2000s when Sam Raimi's Spider-Man really kicked the craze off, there hasn't been a great Superman movie. And considering we're in the age of superheroes flourishing like that, it's almost criminal that Superman is kind of left to like suffer. That's such a huge iconic property. Warner Brothers and DC should be killing with that. There's no reason that they should not be dominating so many things when you have Superman in your roster. So I'm glad that they're gonna like pay more attention to that character because I love Superman, and I think that the public's perception of him is makes him seem outdated or corny or lame, and I think it's
Boring.
just a fantastic character that has a lot of potential, and I think that there is a great film waiting to be made about Superman.
Definitely.
I'm gonna disagree.
Okay.
I'm tired of Superman.
Okay.
If they're really, I don't know. First of all, it seemed like very conflicting news to me, where they're like, we want these three things. We want a Kevin Feige type of person. We want to revamp Superman, but we want more films like the Joker. I think that last point doesn't really coincide with the first 2 points, because the Joker was an art house film. They started talking about a Joker sequel, and that movie does not need a sequel.
Exactly.
That movie is great standalone, but they now want to do like a universe thing with it. Like I think they're still trying to emulate the MCU while be their own thing, and that's never going to work. I don't think it's ever going to work until they 100% decide they're going to do their own thing. I think they rushed the Justice League. We all saw what happened there, just because they were trying to do this huge team up like MCU did with Avengers. And I think them pushing for Superman again doesn't coincide with what made the MCU successful in the first place. Like, MCU was successful because they started with Iron Man. He was a lesser known character. Iron Man, you had Guardians of the Galaxy, which is my favorite movie in the MCU. And you have all these characters that people didn't really know, so they don't have these like perceived like already ideas about these characters. They didn't start off with, obviously they didn't own them, but they didn't start off with Spider-Man or with the X-Men, with like the bigger Marvel properties. Eventually they got to Captain America, right, which is one of the bigger names in Marvel. But they didn't start off with the big names in Marvel, and I think DC needs to start really embracing that. We've seen it in the Suicide Squad and with like the Peacemaker show, which is some of the better content that we've seen come out of DC live action. And it's because they're lesser known characters that we are now growing to really like find interesting and want to know more about them. I think doing another Superman movie is almost doing a disservice. I think, like, for example, the way that MCU will like bring in like the Hulk every once in a while. We all know who the Hulk is. He doesn't need his own movie right now, right?
And that's also because of the Universal having Universal rights also. So
yeah, but I'm sure if they really wanted to do a movie, like, I feel like Disney and Universal have been so cool with Hulk. We've never heard anything like contractual disagreements between the Hulk and the MCU, but we have heard it with Spider-Man, right? I think we can let Superman go. Superman is a great character. I love him, and obviously we did the All-Star Superman series, and I loved reading that comic book with you guys and going through that. But at the same time, I think we should start leaving room for some of these other DC superheroes. There's so many. And I find it so interesting. I have the DC encyclopedia, and I literally just sit there with my son just going through it. And he's like, who's this? I was like, I don't know. I've never heard of this superhero. And we like start reading about their backstory. Like, this is so cool. Like, imagine we could see some of this live. Like, there's so much more than just Superman, Batman, Flash.
I get what you're saying. I mean, the only thing that they seem to know how to handle is Batman. Yeah. And that's more in the solo projects anyway than necessarily the team up's only one. I just think that, like, to me, I don't really think there has been a great Superman movie since 1981.
True. I agree with that.
So I would like to see another one. And I mean, I love the Christopher Reeve Superman, but I mean, it's kind of sad that it's been that long since there's been a decent one. Exactly. Yeah.
And I think
I liked Man of Steel. I actually liked that one. So.
I like it. I don't love it though. If you know what I mean. It's good, but it's not like one of the highlights of superhero movies of the past 20 years when you think
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
And I think my thing about it is I definitely understand what you're saying, Eric, and I would like to see characters like Plastic Man, would like to see Captain Atom, and a lot of those lesser known ones who haven't gotten their due time in the spotlight. But I think if this would have been done right the first time, had it been handled correctly, and Cavill was around for like 6-7 movies and got an awesome arc, and brought about that revitalization of the character to the public and said, hey, this character isn't boring, or he's not outdated, he's not just a Boy Scout, he's a really cool character. I think I would have been more with that idea, that mindset that, okay, now we can move. Not saying that they can't do that, but I think I understand where they're coming from with realizing his importance to DC Comics and him being pretty much the epitome of how you characterize any superhero nowadays, like comparing him to Superman. So more from that perspective, I think this is about how they're going about it and why they see the importance of a character like Superman and why they feel the need to revitalize him. But that other thing, it does feel a little bit, and this is something I mentioned too, it does feel a little bit of a contradiction in that their way to describe that they want a Kevin Feige, they say they don't want a guru, they want someone like Kevin Feige, but more somebody with the business and the marketing aspect of it, which
but that's just since we want Kevin Feige.
Exactly.
Kevin Feige.
Yeah, I understand that too, and I'm hoping you have more just somebody who's understanding of these comic book characters, maybe not trying to have to make everything we got to make everything faithful, but knows how to bring them about the best of their ability in live action. Something like it, which is obviously what Kevin Feige did. So that, and the whole thing with the Joker, I think they want to focus on something like that because it did $1 billion. So I think more so from that, they're looking at the money that came in from it, and that's when we started hearing the talks about sequels and stuff that didn't really make sense pertaining to having an own Jokerverse. Like, just because it made so much money and they weren't expecting it, now it becomes a matter of, okay, how can we build on this? How can we make it last? How can we make this money-making machine go further than we anticipated?
I don't think these execs understand what the fans like something like the Joker, or even the most recent Batman movie. If that felt like an art house film at times too. And I think that's what really attracted a lot of people to those films and why they did so well. You start pushing that into a sequel and try to make, like you said, like a universe out of it. It gets convoluted.
I get what you're saying, because I don't think art house films lend themselves to universes. I think when art house films become franchises, they cease to be art house anymore, and it starts to kind of lose what you're saying. So I actually kind of get what you mean by that.
Yeah. And then moving on from that, last thing we have is we just got a first look at Thor: Love and Thunder. The trailer dropped on Sunday or Monday. And what did you guys think of first look at the trailer? We got first look of the universe, first look at what's going to happen, first look at Mighty Thor, aka Jane Foster, Lady Thor. What did you guys think? Eric is probably the Thor aficionado between us all. So what did you think, Eric?
I thought it's really cool. I think the whole idea of it, so in the trailer it kind of looks like the Guardians leave him, and then he's obviously turning away from fighting. He leaves his axe in the dirt, very similar to how like Thanos moved away from fighting at the end of Infinity War. And I thought it was really cool that they did that. I really want to see a 90s training montage in this movie, because that's kind of what they were alluding to, especially with the soundtrack and everything. It feels very, very much like Guardians of the Galaxy, or like Thor Ragnarok, right? That was like a really fun story for Thor. And but overall, I'm super excited. We got our first look of Olympus, right? So we saw the Zeus's head, but I think that's just one step closer to getting Hercules in the MCU, which is what I'm most excited for. I really hope we see Hercules. I don't know who would play him. I think Henry Cavill said he would be down to play Hercules, which would be funny because that would mean Zeus is his dad, played by Russell Crowe, which is also
his dad. And he was Jor-El. And
but I think it'd be really cool. I think like not trying to like anticipate Hercules coming out, but I also like how they did not show Gore the God Butcher, which is, we know it's Christian Bale playing the antagonist of this film, and they didn't show any sense really of an antagonist other than that huge creature that was dead. And if you're not familiar with Thor's background, he's friends with different gods from different mythologies, and that's one of the gods that he was actually friends with. So Gore the God Butcher kills him, and that like cinematic like sequence in the trailer was pulled directly from the comic book.
Seeing that side by side was
so
really cool. Yeah, it was awesome.
So I'm super excited, and obviously we got our first look at the Mighty Thor, Jane Foster. So I think it'd be a really cool. I almost feel like Thor would have to change his name because in the comic books, she becomes Thor and he goes by Odin's son.
Mhm.
And I feel like Jane Foster might actually kind of be the main character of this film in a way, and Thor might be second.
That's kind of the feeling that I get off of it, that they're kind of like making way more for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the title, like with Love in there. Love just makes it seem like, I feel like that. When I heard that, I'm like, this feels like it's gonna be Jane Foster centered.
Yeah, Love and Thunder. So yeah, so I'm super excited for it. I think so. If people aren't familiar with Jane Foster's Thor, Jane Foster has cancer, but whenever she turns into Thor, she doesn't have the cancer. So whenever she holds Mjolnir, and what happens is all the keto treatment that she gets goes away when she becomes Thor. So she technically becomes a little bit more sick every time she becomes Thor. And the whole idea of the God Butcher is that he kills the gods because they want to answer his prayers or his pleas for help. And so he's like the complete opposite of Jane Foster, right? So he finds gods that aren't doing anything, which it kind of seems like Thor Odinson is in that position right now. He doesn't want to fight anymore. So he finds those gods to kill them. And then you have Jane Foster, who is the complete opposite, where even though she is dying, she will turn into Thor to fight. And I think that's going to be the real, like, I think this movie might get even a little bit deeper than Thor Ragnarok did, where Thor Ragnarok was just a fun movie, like at the very surface level. I think this one might actually get a lot deeper into like the psyche of the characters and who they are. And hopefully we see some really cool character development come out of it.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'm excited. The trailer, I mean, they waited this long to give us a trailer, so I was just excited to get anything at this point.
I'm excited for it. It looks really good. I really liked Thor Ragnarok a lot, and I wasn't really a big fan of the first Thor movie, what they were kind of doing with it at first, but I kind of like the direction that it's going in.
Or the second one, probably. I think
we don't talk about the second one.
The first two, not really a fan of it, but this reminds me a lot of Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy, so that's the kind of vibe that I get off of that. I was not aware of that storyline with Jane Foster, but that actually sounds really dramatically fascinating. That sounds great, actually. That sounds like a really good story right there.
Yeah, dude. That comic series in the past like 10 years with her as Thor. I know a lot of people, especially like hardcore comic fans, didn't like it at first, but it slowly grew into like one of the more popular versions of Thor, and like sales of the comic books of her comic books outsold the previous like 3 or 4 Thor series. So it was a really popular series. Yeah,
that's cool. But I'm pretty excited for it, dude, and it has a great cast.
The cast out of this world. Yep.
Definitely looking forward to this. I didn't exactly know what to think about it. I didn't really, and Gore is a character who's only been around like 10 years. He hasn't been around that long, so it's pretty easy to just look into his backstory and how he came about. I think with what you had said, Eric, what really hits it home for me and what I really thought about was that this is going to be a deeper exploration of the character. And I think with those two ideas too, like you have Jane, who is willing to engage in battle and is jumping at the chance to be Thor and protect people. Then you have Gore, who's killing gods who he feels are not doing anything, and as a way to get revenge because he called out to the gods. They never answered his prayers, and his people believed in the gods so much, but that led to them dying also. So I feel like those are going to be those two things where he thinks about on who am I, what am I doing, what do I need to do, or I more looking internally at himself on how he can be a better Thor, or maybe he didn't think about things at first, and now it'll be a way to just explore the psyche of that character and what he stands for and what he's truly about.
Yep.
Yeah.
So. And we're going to have a lot of funny banter between him and Star-Lord. That's always going to be cool, and that's always really refreshing to see.
Yeah.
So this movie looks awesome. Comes out early July. Can't wait for it. It's going to be awesome.
Okay.
Moving on from that, this is probably something I wasn't looking forward to because this movie was just so god-awful, and I'm just upset at the thought that I had to watch it and sit through it. and people in the theater freaking walked out. I was like the only one. Like at 30 minutes, people. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't have to sit through the shit show by myself. And then they walked out. I'm like, damn it, I can't walk out. This is for research purposes. I sat through all these other good movies and talked about how awesome they are. Now I need to sit through shitty movies and talk about how bad they are, because that is the duty that we do at Heroes of Mutants. We make the sacrifices that is hard for other people to make, that people won't make.
I feel like I had the opposite experience that you did. My experience
is funny.
The opposite. Not because it was a good movie, but because it's awful. But the audience and the crowd that I watched it with had a much different reaction. Your crowd seemed like they got irritated and just kind of left.
Well, it was just me and 2 other people, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I actually saw it with a crowd of a solid, like, over 30 people. It wasn't like a packed.
I'm jealous.
theater.
Did you watch it opening weekend?
No.
Oh, okay.
It
I watched it the weekend. Well, obviously we're talking about Morbius. It came out at the beginning of the month. We didn't get a chance to
we're talking about Morbius.
talk about it. Well, obviously people can put 2 and 2 together. Obviously we're not talking about the Batman, or we're not talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. This was the only movie that came out recently that's just utter trash. The thing that really got me too about this is it's funny. This was the successor to Batman. The successor to Batman. It came out immediately after Batman. In terms of that, it immediately followed the Batman, and which really just puts into perspective how awful and just how sucked this movie is.
Yeah.
Because regardless if you like the Batman or not, one thing is for certain: you can tell it was made with a lot of passion, a lot of commitment, and a lot of understanding to make something good, or at least make something fresh and unique, and actually do a good job with it and have a purpose with it. You know, we talk a lot about how Jimmy brought up Jeffrey Wright was looking around at Matt Reeves on set, like, man, this guy is like Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. He's just understanding everything that is good, like understanding what he wants in the shot, what he wants in the cinematography, talk with the cinematographer, hey, this is what I want, this is what we need for this shot. And it just blown away by just how prepared Matt Reeves was. And then when you get to this movie, the best way to describe it and sum it up very quickly is that this movie feels so corporate, which it sucks in this day and age, because you see so many comic book films that are made with passion, made with commitment, and made with the understanding, like, hey, we're going to do something fresh and unique. We're going to put people in the perspective of these characters, who they are, and take them on this journey. And you don't feel that with this movie. This movie just feels so by the numbers, so rushed, and with no masking that they're making it just because they want to make money, which obviously all these companies and all these productions want to do. But it's even more weird by the fact that it's making a Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man.
But I mean, here's the thing. All movies to an extent are corporate, but that doesn't mean, every movie, like even the Batman, Warner Brothers didn't put up money for that because they wanted to tell the vision of a starving artist. They wanted to get their vision. They wanted to make money. At the same time, just because something is corporate does not mean that it can't be made with love and artistry and care and passion. Yeah.
Well, that more so, like, I mean, you can really feel how corporate this movie is. Like, just by
feels
experiencing
like
it.
Slapped together by people who didn't care, who just wanted to turn a profit. And I was actually telling Eric before the show, I get the feeling when I watch this that it probably wasn't that good in the first place, but somewhere in the editing room, they managed to make it worse. Because I'm not convinced that any screenwriter, no matter how bad they are, would push something like this out onto the public and say that it's ready. This movie doesn't really make any sense at all. It doesn't make sense as a villain movie because, one, Morbius never feels like a villain at any point in this movie. For all intents and purposes, he is just basically a superhero. The villain in this movie, played by Matt Smith, makes no sense as a villain, has no motivation whatsoever, has no purpose, is just bad because they took the formula and because Morbius is denying who he really is, so I'm going to start killing people because of that. And I'm like...
I mean, granted, they did try to show a little bit of his backstory, you know, him getting beat up as a kid and now having this power and feeling like, I'm going to take it out on this world that rejected me and this world that punished me for being sick. So there was little subtle things there, but it wasn't fleshed out.
That just seems so petty in this day and age. Where we have, like, think about, like, I don't know, like, think about Thanos. He has a very, I mean, he's evil and he's wrong, but he has a very specific purpose and he has valid points to make. Think about Thanos or think about the Riddler in the recent Batman movie. They both all have points to make. In this day and age, it's just sloppy just to have a villain. I was mad. The world treated me bad and now I got a little of this and now I'm a villain and I'm bad. Like, it doesn't seem justified enough. We've had too many great villain character arcs and motivation and like interesting motivations. This has absolutely nothing. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, one of the best movie moments in the movie theater this year, not because it was good, but it was just an amazing moment, was the moment where Matt Smith is getting ready and he starts dancing and working out, and then he starts like doing his like bat faces, and then he starts doing this weird shit in the camera, and then you see these Instagram vampire filters come over him. That's what it looked like to me, like Instagram filters. Dancing for God knows what or for God knows who. But the audience that I saw it with was like busting up and rolling when I saw that at that scene. So many things that came out of this movie are just hilarious. It's hilariously bad. It is so profoundly misguided at points that I couldn't help but smirk at it. So I hate to admit I had fun with this in a kind of ironic way. It was amusing because it was like, how bad is it going to get and how far are they going to get? Because the first half of the movie isn't that bad. It's just mediocre. The second half of the movie is where it really plunges into a point of no return, and it was something to see. I'll say that. It wasn't a good something, but it was something to see.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Where like the first part of the movie, I guess I'll start with what I liked about it. I think they did a really cool job with his powers, with how he got his powers and showing his powers. I thought that was probably the best sequence in the whole movie, like when they were showing his powers and the way he flies. I think they did a really cool job with his flight. Other than that, it was just all over the place. I was telling Jimmy, I just from the trailers, I thought this was gonna be more of like a film about like his like inner demons and like almost like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Like he has this bloodlust and he wants to kill people. And then they showed like Tyrese, for example, like really popular actor. They showed him as the detective. And I at the time I thought Matt Smith might also be like a detective trying to find Morbius because Morbius is killing people, which would make sense because that's what he does in the comic books, right?
Exactly.
So I thought it was gonna be more of a like he's trying to control his powers and there's detectives trying to find him, and I thought that would be more of a cohesive story than what we actually
you know
got.
What? That sounds like a good movie. What you described is what Morbius should have been. That's how you make a movie about a villain trying to struggle with who he is. Somebody who isn't inherently bad, but is becoming bad. And you see this internal struggle of him transforming into a villain. I got into that.
Like, this movie could have worked for me in that same vein if they had like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde meets vampire, meets Dracula, meets modern superhero movie. I think that all could have worked if they had flushed it out better. But also, too, it's like the writers that they got, Burke Sharpless and Matt Sazama, these guys wrote Dracula Untold in 2014 with Luke Evans. And they also wrote Gods of Egypt in 2016, and they wrote Power Rangers in 2017. And they're going to be writing Madam Web for 2023, starring Dakota Johnson. So,
Jimmy didn't know.
Yeah. So it's funny to me. I'm like, how did this movie, like, just the writing and all the setup with everything, how was it so bad? And then I look at like these guys' track record, and I'm not saying that they're horrible. They also did Lost in Space. I heard Lost in Space was a TV show, I think on Netflix, was pretty good. But as far as movies that they've done, that they've written for, they just don't have a great track record.
Literally before you came onto this podcast, me and Eric were discussing the writers, and it was like, how do these people keep getting rehired over and over again? We were looking over the Rotten Tomato scores of each of their movies, and it's like 25% for Gods of Egypt, 15% for
God, The Last Witch Hunter. I did not even. I just saw like Dracula Untold, Gods of Egypt, and Power Rangers. I saw because The Last Witch Hunter is like nestled in the middle of that, and I'm like, wait, I'm like, Jesus Christ,
like
the best movie they made was Power Rangers.
Yeah, that's the best movie that they made, and I just have to wonder what is Sony smoking right now that they looked at their credits and looked at these resumes and said, this is gonna be what's gonna make us a good movie. And I'm like, do they even care? I have to wonder if Sony even cares, because they're aware that these people do not have a good track record. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but the work speaks for itself. That's too many strings of like really bad movies to be writing to think, okay, that's who I'm going to get to write a potentially dramatically a story with dramatic potential, a story about a man going through an inner struggle, a good person who turns bad. I don't know, man. It's mind-boggling that they are still working and that they still get job after job with what they're churning out.
Yeah,
it's scary. It's scary to think that, but also like the whole movie, the writing at the end of it was so bad, and then you brought up that they're writing Madam Web, and that makes me so worried for the entire Spider-Verse. Like they're like the live action Spider-Verse is they're fumbling the bag right now. I thought Venom 2 wasn't a good movie, and now
definitely
Morbius came out and it makes Venom 2 look like freaking spectacular. Like
exactly.
it's crazy
next to this,
right? Like, man, it's scary to think that, like you said, this movie came out right after Batman, right? But this is the first Sony Pictures Marvel movie since No Way Home. And the fact that like you have this great movie that you did with Disney, and then once Disney leaves, you give us this. It's like, come on, guys. Like, what are you doing out there? Like, I think Sony Pictures is slowly proving they cannot make a good Spider-Verse movie without Disney.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They've proven that many times.
I hope
these past three movies, and
all right, so this movie had a dramatic drop off from week 1 to week 2 in terms of ticket sales, like dramatic drop off.
Yeah,
and it's not good for its box office. I am hoping that Sony takes this as a sign, because there comes a point where I get it. You want to make money, but quality matters. Quality matters because if everybody goes to see the movie on opening weekend, even if it makes a lot of money on opening weekend, you're going to have a lot of people walking out of that theater, talking to their friends about it, talking about it on social media. We're talking about it's all over TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, like nothing but negative stuff, just completely crapping on this. Twitter, it's just nothing all over social media, just completely crapping on this movie. If you have a good movie that is of genuine quality, people will spread the word, and people who might have been, like, considered, I don't know if I'm going to see this, maybe not, once they hear from a bunch of people like, no, this is a really good movie, it's going to help your box office. It matters. Quality in a movie matters if it's going to make money. And studios don't seem to think it doesn't matter. It does. It matters so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I think they underestimate the viewers. They think we're just going to go watch it just because it's a superhero movie.
Or just because of its supposed connections to Spider-Man.
Yeah. I mean, can we talk about those connections at the end of the movie? Yes. What the hell is going on there?
Two of the worst post-credit scenes ever, without a doubt. Without a doubt, it makes no sense. It's like, even when you see Venom in Venom 2, when he gets brought into the MCU, he freaks out. Yeah. Very believable. But here, Michael Keaton goes to another freaking universe. Hope the food's better here. Really? Like, seriously? Who the hell wrote that? And just to have, like, I don't know how Michael Keaton could have done that with a straight face. Like, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Maybe he's just so old, he's senile, he just didn't exactly know what the hell he was saying. But it's just, I don't understand how that came about. And especially with bringing in Morbius into it, and, like, you talked about this before, Jimmy. I always go back to it because it's something that once you said, like, I realized just how integral and important to the character it is. But Spider-Man, one thing that makes his villain so great is the fact he has those personal connections between them. You know, Doc Ock in, like, a mentor kind of role, and Green Goblin with that, like, fatherly figure kind of role too. Both mentor types. But then that makes it, with those connections to Peter Parker, it makes it even harder for him when he has to fight them as Spider-Man. But here it's like wanting to form an alliance because Spider-Man is involved somehow. I mean, he doesn't. I think what could have worked for me too is, like, it seems like he doesn't exactly remember the spell that Doctor Strange had done at the end of No Way Home. Like, everybody forgot about Peter Parker. So he is under the impression that Spider-Man is somehow involved for his incarceration or involved with what happened to him. But and then for Morbius to want. So from his perspective, I can see that it's a little muddled, doesn't make sense, but I can run with it. But for Morbius to hear him out and saying that this alliance is intriguing to him, that just makes no sense. We have no idea who this character is, what he wants, and what he's gonna do, and why. Like it just doesn't make sense in terms of the writing of this character.
It doesn't make any sense because, for one thing, this is sold as like a villain movie, and Morbius doesn't behave like a villain. For all intents and purposes, his function in this movie is to be the superhero, to be the hero in it. There's no reason why at the end I could conceive of him encountering the Vulture and saying, let's go, we're going to go take down Spider-Man. I'm like, why? And why does he care? How is this part of his mission? And what does he have against Spider-Man? Like, I can't conceive of why he would just link up with the Vulture. And you know what's sad? The most significant thing about that scene had nothing to do with what was going on. It was cool to see a Batman and Joker who never met each other meet up on screen. That is literally the most interesting thing about it, because it's dumb. It's just a completely useless post-credit scene, and it's baffling. You get the sense that you were talking about what are the rules here. Like, I don't think Sony even really thought about how they're going to use these, how they're going to use, or why Michael Keaton's Vulture is in this universe. They just saw dollar signs with, oh, there's a multiverse, we can just switch him in and out. I don't even think they really even thought through the logic of why he's here. It's just because we can, because we're Sony. And this movie just reeks of nothing but decisions like that, just because it's going to make us money and it's going to get us to the next phase. Who cares? It doesn't make sense for the storytelling. It doesn't make sense on a narrative level, but we're going to do it just because we want to get to the next movie. And to an extent, the MCU does that too, but it makes sense though. On a narrative level, there is a reason for these characters to be linking up, and there is a reason to set up the next movie. This looks like they have no plan or have no idea what they are doing. It's just, let's just slap some shit together. People will see it, and we're just going to sit back and collect money off of it. It's insulting. It's actually kind of insulting. Very.
And honestly, I'm not going to lie. I probably was being a little over dramatic with this whole, oh, it was trash, it sucks.
No, you're not.
Honestly,
You're not.
I won't say it's complete and utter trash. It's just in this day and age where everything coming out is at least decent. Or even with stuff like Venom 1 and Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, there was at least stuff to enjoy. Or even like The Eternals, which is probably the MCU's most recent not great film. At least it had the visuals and the cinematography to save it. But
is leagues and betters.
Yeah, exactly.
Miles better than this.
Yeah. This movie, it just feels so lazy, so unmotivated, and so uninspired. It just feels insulting to watch it as a fan and a lover, someone who's very passionate about superhero media, because it just doesn't seem like there was any direction or any understanding. Like, hey, we're gonna make this good. Like, this is a unique character. We have this unique take on this character. We have somebody who has like this unique perspective in the superhero world, where obviously with the whole vampire perspective, that's something that is unique and would be most reminiscent of something like Blade, because Blade is a vampire hunter and is involved with vampires. But still, it just feels like there could have been something good here, and that it was just all mishandled so freaking much.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
And the only redeeming thing, or I won't say redeeming, the only thing I think I liked about this was that relationship and the dynamic that we saw between Jared Leto and Matt Smith. I thought they had pretty cool banter together in that one scene where they were like walking together. They walked to Central Park and he was talking to him about, oh, I need financing for this. It needs to be like offshore. It can't be here. I actually really like their chemistry and their banter, and you can definitely tell that they had a lot of chemistry with each other. But I think the thing that really threw me off too is that fact that he called him Milo, his real name. Like he was calling him Milo, and then in his adult life he carried on to call him Milo, but his real name is Lucian. And I saw that in the beginning where you had said, oh, like, hi, I'm Lucian. He's like, no, you're Milo. Like, you were Milo, the one before you was Milo, the one before that was Milo, the one so it's obviously a defense mechanism as a kid. You don't want to get attached because this person is going to die, and you don't want to have to deal with all those emotions that are going to follow it. That makes sense. And then when he saves his life, he, wakes like, Lucian, you okay? I thought that was going to be the moment, like, he's seen him as as his own person, and he grew to like that was where that care and that concern began, and that relationship started to prosper and to grow. But then we see later he calls him and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, that's throwing me off. Why is he calling him Milo? That's not his name. Like,
Okay, I'm gonna say this though. Lucian and Martine had two of the most effing hilarious death scenes I've ever seen on film. First, when she dies, she's like dying and she does this thing with her tongue really quick. Literally, the whole audience was like roaring with laughter at her death scene because she's dying and then she goes with her tongue and then she looks like, okay, she's a vampire now. And then when he dies, before he dies, he does this weird little growl and then just dies. I was like, so goofy. It is just it's goofy. It was
I'm not gonna lie, I feel like there were some elements of Batman Begins ripped off from here.
Yes.
Like with the one where him entering the contain where all the bats were, that score and him like going like that feels the music and even the soundtrack feels very reminiscent of Hans Zimmer's score when Christian Bale in Batman Begins when it's in the cave when he first encounters the bats.
That's interesting that you said that because the people I saw it with all both agreed. There's like several Batman Begins ripoffs right there. It's like when Bale is like exposing himself to bats, and it's a very Nolan-esque musical swell. That
exactly. Then him calling the bats at the end too, like that also felt like Batman Begins and a freaking Kamehameha bat thing. Like what?
Okay.
Honestly, that was the only thing I think I enjoyed. The action sequences suck. The narrative sucks. We don't know who this character is. The pacing is just off the walls, bit by bit. Here. And we're setting up for some kind of Spider-Man universe film that doesn't involve Spider-Man or something like that.
Something like that.
Just compared to everything we see, this is without a doubt the worst superhero movie I've seen recently for that fact. At least the other movies had redeeming qualities or things that I can enjoy about them. But here it just feels that all that is non-existent.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy really anything aside from that stuff we saw between him and Matt Smith. The thing that sucks too is Matt Smith is a really great actor. And he actually swore off superhero films for a long time. And it wasn't until when he was approached with this role and he talked to Karen Gillian, because Karen Gillian, who plays Nebula, she was also in Doctor Who, and told it and encouraged him like, hey, you should take this role. This would be a good thing for you. I think you'd really like it. And the fact that it had to be this, that he had to finally say yes to this, like
of all superhero things to agree to, the fact that it was this one is borderline tragic. Sad.
Because I could see him working in the MCU or as in a movie that's actually good and actually work out well for him. Hopefully we'll see that down the line. I think he's probably going to be traumatized from doing superhero films for a while, unfortunately, but great actor. And Jared Leto, it was kind of weird to see him so subdued. We're used to seeing all the preparation and him not exactly being over the top, but because he's a method actor, he had to, it just feels like weird from that perspective. Like him just being so subdued.
The only comment I have to say about that, he like made himself like crippled on set, so it took him 40 minutes to go to the bathroom and he was halting production, doing stuff like that. He's not bad in this movie, but when this is what you come up with, your method acting looks stupid when this is the product that we get out of it. So it just makes him look dumb. The fact that he chooses to do these things for what? For this? This is what you did when he went method for? Give me a break. I don't know.
Exactly.
Exactly,
but
it is what it is.
Well, go see it for yourselves or don't. You can definitely skip it. But we had to sit through trash for an hour and whatever it is. So I feel like that is our penance for it. So
Well, it's okay. The movie's gonna come out soon on streaming service and stuff, because usually when a movie does this bad, it'll go on to streaming really quickly.
It'll be coming soon to streaming services for you not to see. But moving on from that, we actually haven't covered Moon Knight in a little bit. Missed episode 2 and 3 and 4. 4 just dropped recently. We're gonna move on a little bit quicker than normal. We'll get back to viewing these episodes or reviewing these episodes on a week-by-week basis starting next week. But episode 2 was cool because we saw actually, the thing was, when it was announced that Mr. Knight was going to be appearing in the show also, because Mr. Knight in the comics, he's a separate identity. He's not Mark or Jake Mark or Steven taking over and that's like their version of Moon Knight. He's actually a separate identity who is a consultant and is more kind of like a detective in the comic books. So it was interesting to see that it was actually the Steven taking over, who has control of the scarab of the body, and that's his version of Moon Knight. So it was pretty cool to see that we see he's obviously using his mind more and a little bit more strategic. And Mark as Moon Knight is a little bit more brutish and just more violent and a little bit more over the top and doesn't really use his head in situations. So that was cool to see.
I gotta say, in episode 2, when we finally got to see like the costume come out and he's fighting, that was pretty badass. I thought that was actually quite spectacular. I think episode 2 and 4 are probably my favorite episodes of this of the show right now.
Yeah, definitely.
We
interesting thing too, we had a few in episode 2, we had a few references to Moon Knight's first appearance, Werewolf by Night number 32, August 1975. Top of the bus when Mr. Knight fights the Jackal reads as WBN 0032, Werewolf by Night, and obviously number 32, the number of the comic. There's a QR code on the door of the storage unit that sends you to a free digital comic. And when the fake cops on Harrow's followers run his file, his number is listed as 1975. So it's pretty cool that they threw in a few of those references, especially his first appearance, into there. So I thought that was a really cool nod and a really cool way to show respect and pay homage to the source material.
Yep.
But overall, what did you guys think of these episodes? Especially, I think the most recent episode is the biggest one that really caused me to just be super confused at what the heck is going on.
I am a little confused. I don't know what's going on, but in a good way. There are times when you're confused when you shouldn't be, and I think at this point in the story, you are supposed to be a little confused. You are supposed to be disoriented the way that he's disoriented and experiencing what's going on. Is he in a hospital? Is he going insane? Eric, you compared it to Legion.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of that there. I could see a lot of echoes of that here. I didn't really see how many parallels there were until you actually mentioned them.
Yeah, it's crazy. So in the episode 4, we obviously see him in the mental hospital and kind of battling against that. And I saw it. I saw Legion and I love that show. I think it's really cool how there's the idea of these split personalities and the mental illness and bringing that in. And I was actually telling Jimmy also, this is very reminiscent of the 2016 run of Moon Knight, when he too is in like mental clinic, and the whole point of it is you don't know if you're or if he's like imagining it or if it's actually happening. But in the comic books, he's put into this mental clinic, or he puts himself into this mental clinic to get free from Khonshu, and by putting himself in there, I mean his whole mind is his way of looking at reality to be able to navigate through it and be free of Khonshu.
Yeah.
I don't think that's happening here. I think they're obviously taking reference from that, but I think this might be him like trying to get away from like Arthur Harrow, or even like one step further, maybe Amit was actually unleashed, and maybe he's trying to get away from Amit, and I don't know. So yeah, like I said, we don't really know what's happening here, but it's all over the place.
Yeah.
But I love how they're portraying Khonshu more than anything. I think obviously they're doing a really good night with Moon Knight and in showing like the identity disorder between Steve and Mark and the going back and forth. But I think the relationship between Mark Spector and Khonshu is really interesting to see, because in the comic books, Khonshu is a god who's like a protector, but he's also self-serving. And
exactly.
I think that the show is completely going in that direction too, where you see him like yell at Mark all the time and be like, you need to do this, and he's almost like blackmailing him at times into doing certain things.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially because Layla is going to be his next avatar, and that's something that he hangs on him all the time. Like, oh, well, you know, my next avatar is going to be. And
I kind of like that about Khonshu and the way that he's written as a character, you know that he's, I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I seriously doubt his motivations or whether or not Khonshu is
Yeah.
actually a good entity or means well. I
Yep.
think Khonshu does, just based on how Khonshu is represented in the story. But I like that the whole time it leaves you in doubt. Like, it just leaves me really doubting whether or
Yeah.
not his intentions are
Yeah.
actually good for Mark.
Yeah.
And
I think
the feeling
I
that
think
he's enslaving him and abusing him.
yeah, I think Khonshu as a Egyptian god is in line with what we've seen from gods in the MCU,
Mhm.
right? Like
Exactly.
like you see like Loki, he's a god, he's self-serving, he's not like as all powerful as like other humans might think him to be. And I think that's the case with Khonshu as well. He needs an avatar to be able to do things.
Yeah.
So as much as he's trying to control Mark, in the end, he needs Mark. He needs Steven.
Yeah.
And you can, and I think that point in end of episode 3, where he helps them move the night sky, and he gets captured. He knew he was going to get captured and he was going to get put away, but he trusts Mark, Steven, and Layla that they're going to come back for him.
Yeah.
So even though he might be selfish at times, I think the fact that he sacrificed himself, I think it kind of shows like he's actually trying to do good also, but he's not perfect.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that it's really interesting, just the dynamic that's happening there all the time.
Well, especially when you take in that perspective, and that's something that they've actually said later in the comics too, where they've hinted at it, where Harrow says, "Do you feel that Khonshu chose you because you were easy to break, or because you were already broken?" And that's something that is in the comics too, because it's been revealed that he actually chose him because he had a very traumatic childhood, and that he would be so that he was influencing him and made that psychic connection with him as a kid, because he was already going through trauma, and that he was going to be easy for him to control.
When Harrow's making his case in front of the gods, he has legitimate points when he said this man is very sick and he's abusing him, taking advantage of him. So he kind of makes the bad guy almost look reasonable at times.
Yeah.
But I also think that, and this is also in line with the 2016 run of Moon Knight, where they don't show his mind as broken. They just show it's a identity disorder.
Mm-hmm.
But they almost show it as a superpower in its own, because you have Stephen Grant, who's super smart, and then you have Mark Spector, who knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to like combat, and he can switch between the characters, and they almost show that as it's a superpower in its own. And I think the show might be going in that direction, especially now since he doesn't have the Moon Knight powers. I think they might be going in that direction too, and showing that. But yeah, I think it's super cool that they're diving even deeper into that now with the third persona. That was teased.
It seems it's going really in depth into who Mark is as a person, as we learn a little bit more about his past, some of his dishonesty with Layla and her father, and you could tell that he was really hesitant in trying to get her out before she could ask too many questions about what was going on.
Exactly.
I really liked the last sequence in the hospital. He fell into it felt like a Lazarus pit sort of situation when Harrow he kind of fell backwards. There's a lot of details in there that you like, if you might slip by, like one of the ladies in the mental asylum is when she's like drawing a picture, it's of Khonshu. You see the Moon Knight kind of action figure there. There's a handful of other things I kind of forgot, but if you go through like one at a time, they're doing this really complicated, really like one, it looks like long take, but like there's like important details in every frame. Everything that they pass by is important and into something. So you can actually go back and watch it and pick up on things. Yeah.
I was gonna say a super important one that you see in that scene. The guy that's calling out the bingo numbers, he's the gold man. The man that
Crowley.
Yeah, that Steven goes to and then talks to. And in the comics, he's actually like almost like a friend to Jake, who we haven't seen yet. And so I think this
he's more of like an informant would be
an informant. An informant, just another person on the outside looking in, right?
Yeah.
And I think we haven't really seen much of him in this show, and he's pretty important in the comic book. So I think him like saying out the bingo numbers or something. I think there's something there. I don't know what it is again. But,
or it could have, because there were also a lot of characters who were involved in his life, so it could have just been a way for him to think that he was imagining all these people in that scenario, or that it was a way to mess with his mind. I feel, because when I seen this, it was really cool, because I thought of like that comic run where in the mental institution, and where you're not exactly sure as a reader what's real. Is this just a very sick man who is just lost completely in all of his illusions and all of the deceptive thinking going on? But also too, at the end of it, I'm wondering if it's just some kind of purgatory, maybe because of Khonshu's influence on him. When you die, or when you're in like a state of limbo, that's where you go. Or that's because of the god you see at the very end is Taweret, and she's the goddess, the protective ancient Egyptian goddess of childbirth and fertility. That was when I was like, oh hi, and they start screaming. It was kind of funny too. They screamed in like different pitches. Steven had more of a high pitched scream, and Mark had a regular scream, so I thought that was funny. But I'm wondering if that's just where like those god, because she was one of those gods that's also banished and was in the statue. So I'm wondering if that's where other gods are. So maybe that's how he's able to free Khonshu.
Yeah, that's interesting. She's not in the comic books, in like the Moon Knight comics at all.
No, but she's an Egyptian deity, so it makes sense.
So they brought her in.
It's one of those things where I'm pretty sure once the show is wrapped up, you can go back and look at that sequence, and you're probably going to see a lot of clues and a lot of giveaways that we're not picking up yet. Like the pieces are all there. We just don't know where they go or how they fit at this point. Yeah. And that scene was hilarious when they both scream at the same time.
Yeah.
And they did a really good job, because it looks like a really long take, but then like when the camera moves and it's with both Oscar Isaacs in the frame, it's obviously not. So they did something somewhere to kind of disguise it and make it all there, like it flows together. Also, Oscar Isaac is doing great job, because he is so different as each personality. Like even like the facial expressions, it feels like a different person talking, depending on whether Mark is taking over or Steven's taking over. He does a good job of separating their personalities and their voices.
I'm so happy that he got this chance to really show off his acting skills, because even when he's not talking, you know who you're looking at. You know if you're looking at Steven, you know if you're looking at Mark, literally just by like how soft he lets his facial features get, right? Or how he looks at Layla while she's talking. Like you can tell who it is. And I think it's such a good, he's killing it. He's killing it with this show.
I laughed pretty hard too when they had that little Fight Club reference where Mark
he punched himself. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Apparently
awesome.
Too, some of where they filmed the sequences and them trekking through the desert, they filmed some of that also in some Indiana Jones movies. So that further kind of was a way to emulate that was an influence. So I also thought that was a cool little nod. This show does a really good job of a lot of those subtlety stuff that you see in the background, a lot of the set design, the cinematography, a lot of that really is paying tribute to what came before and setting up for other things. So I think that's very cool.
Yeah. What I'm looking forward to is finally getting to see Jake. What's that name? Lockley?
Jake Lockley, yeah.
Like it has to be him, right? In the second coffin.
The only thing I can think of is if they're trying to do something different and have like something else, like going another route, maybe another personality that is created specifically for this show. But I would assume that is Jake Lockley.
Yeah. But because even Stephen Grant's character is different from the comic book, so they can do their own thing with it.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see where that goes. And also, I caught that Arthur called Layla Scarab, like little Scarab. There is a character in the comic books that works with Moon Knight called the Scarlet Scarab. It's played by a guy, so it's a male superhero, and in the comic books. But I think she might end up being the Scarlet Scarab.
There was another nod to that too in that scene when she's like taking his bingo card. She has like a red scarab somewhere on her. I can't remember like if it was on her hand or something, but there was like a red scarab on her, and that also made me think of that too.
Yeah, maybe she can just be like an ally, obviously, to the character. But I think there's a very real possibility that she might inherit some type of powers as well. So there's only 2 episodes left, which is crazy to think.
I gotta be honest with you, I'm a little shocked that there's 2 episodes left because it feels like they're setting up a lot more than that.
I know, it feels like it just started, especially with how this last episode ended.
I feel like the last episode would lead into like a really long arc that's going to take place over time. That's the only thing is I have the hard time with this, so they're going to answer everything in 2 more episodes.
One thing I'm really loving about this series too is it just every episode feels like there's so much world building going on. I thought that was going to be established in the very beginning, maybe with the first episode, the second episode, but it's just everything that happens in these episodes there's so much world building going on.
That's another reason why it's hard to believe it's already going to be over.
Exactly.
Because it feels like they're still setting stuff up. So I imagine they're going to have to bring this all together pretty fast. I
exactly. Well, something I want to add on to that before we wrap this up and get going, but it's because Oscar, I don't know if it was a way of him holding out and maybe trying to negotiate for more money. We saw Tom Holland try to say something like that similar after No Way Home. But he said that he's not contractually obligated to appear as Moon Knight again. Do you guys buy that he won't be back as Moon Knight?
No.
They might. So I know I heard this with Hawkeye because Hawkeye submitted their award stuff for the show and they called it a limited series, which implies there might not be more seasons. And some of the verbiage in a lot of articles discussing Moon Knight have started calling it a limited series as well. So it could be that this might be it. This might be just a limited series, but I doubt that this is going to be the last we see of Moon Knight. Right? I think we're going to see him in at least some other properties. There's always a chance, even if you have a limited series, you can always bring back a limited series for a second season. It's happened before. So, yeah.
What about you, Jimmy? You think we'll see him again?
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to see him again. Yeah, I think a lot of these actors are doing that because they know they can get more money out of it, so they say things like that, and it's going to work. Disney's going to pay them a little bit.
Also,
sometimes I was going to say sometimes it's also very possible that they're being told to not say if they have extended contracts because they don't want to give anything away. Like you don't want to say, oh yeah, I've been contracted for 3 seasons because then now we know there's more seasons coming out.
It's funny too because Jason Momoa, Aquaman, he actually denied that he was going to be Aquaman in the public for about like a year, and we saw Andrew Garfield deny that like left and right, like every time he was in the spotlight or in the public, he always got asked everything like, so are you going to be doing Spider-Man? No, that's just rumors. I wish this and that, and obviously freaking liar,
right?
But that's the thing that's just making it a little bit of a contradiction. Of course. I mean, obviously, but also Feige had said recently that he expects Moon Knight to be involved for like the next 10 years with the MCU, it shows, movies, or just their content going forward. And also, I really would like to see the Midnight Suns, and Moon Knight is definitely on that roster for me, on people that I want to see, or characters that I would like to see with Blade, Ghost Rider, and Daredevil. So that would be a Black Knight too. Yeah, that'd be really cool. But yeah, a lot of good stuff. This show is really good. Just super excited because this is a character I've loved. Obviously, I gravitate more towards those vigilante, anti-hero, combat experts. So that's really cool to see. Really like the show. Disney
Plus. One thing I'm going to say is Oscar Isaac for the next Harvey Dent.
Harvey Dent?
I can see it.
Yes,
I can definitely see it.
I want him to be the next Harvey Dent. That's just me.
You can pull it off.
I mean, you can pull it off. Obviously, he's pulling off these he's already in playing a character who has that kind of issue, so that wouldn't be a problem for him at all. But the show's really good. 4 episodes in on Disney Plus. Make sure you check it out. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Don't go see Morbius because you're not missing anything.
Or if you do go see Morbius,
don't blame us.
Suggestion is get a little inebriated before.
Get very inebriated.
Yeah.
Very.
Go with friends. Because
if you don't want to watch crap alone, watching crap alone is not cool. Watching crap with other people is not cool, but at least you're not alone. So there's that. But thank you guys so much for joining us today. Follow us on IG at Heroes and Mutants Podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends. We'll see you next time. Signing off.